Hello everyone. Allow me to begin by introducing myself. My name is Seishi Morikawa. I'm Japanese and living in Japan. I was born in Hiroshima in 1954. When I was 4 months old, I moved to the Tokyo metropolitan area of Japan. My father was exposed to the atomic bombing in Hiroshima in 1945. He was at the NHK, Hiroshima Central Broadcasting Station of Japan Broadcasting Corporation, which was only 1 kilometer away from the hypocenter. Therefore, I'm a second-generation atomic bomb survivor. Today, I would like to introduce you a tremendous investigative reporting article written by Ms. Misa Koyama of Mainichi newspaper regarding second-generation A-bomb survivors issues, focusing on hereditary effects of radiation and the necessity of support measures for second-generation survivors. This article was published on June 4, 2022 in the nationwide edition of Mainichi newspaper. Before reading the article, I would like to tell you a historical background. The average age of second-generation victims is now around 70 years of age. As they approach the latter half of their lives, they are encountering problems of their own. In the late 1960s, there was a series of leukemia-related deaths among second-generation victims. In order to demand subsidized medical coverage and support for second-generation victims, social advocacy groups were formed. For example, in Hiroshima, the Association for the Protection of In Utero Atomic Bomb Survivors and Second-Generation Atomic Bomb Survivors. Moreover, privately funded research on the hereditary effects of radiation began to emerge. Some of this research suggested that there is a significant difference between second-generation victims and the rest of the population. Second-generation victims from all over Japan began to mobilize to demand comprehensive physical examinations and support measures. In response, the Ministry of Health and Welfare, so named at the time, suddenly announced in the autumn of 1978 that they would be conducting a nationwide physical examination of second-generation survivors. The purpose of said examination was outlined as follows. Although our research conducted by the Radiation Effects Research Foundation, co-sponsored by American and Japanese governments, has proved that there is no conclusive evidence of hereditary effects due to radiation, a number of second-generation victims have expressed concerns about their health. In response, we will conduct a nationwide physical examination to dispel the second-generation survivors' concerns and to confirm once again that there is no evidence of hereditary effects due to radiation. The Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare has been conducting this physical examination since 1979 every fiscal year, even in the absence of subsidized medical coverage, including treatment. Now, I will read the article. A copy of the Physical Examination Survey and Research Report on the Children of Atomic Bomb Victims, which was written about 40 years ago, was donated by Seishi Morikawa to the Mainichi newspaper. Seishi Morikawa is a second-generation atomic bomb survivor. At the time, he urged Ministry of Health and Welfare not to disclose the report. Apparently, the Ministry of Health and Welfare chose not to disclose the report. Also, we asked why Seishi Morikawa chose to oppose the publication at the time, but now decides to openly publish it. Unraveling the historical details, we can see the deep chasm that lies between the attitude of the nation and the current situation of second-generation AVM survivors. The donated document was a copy of the 1979 fiscal year's survey and research report on the health of the second generation of the atomic bomb survivors. The Ministry of Health and Welfare commissioned Japan Public Health Association to prepare the report based on the results of the physical examinations of second-generation AVM survivors in fiscal 1979. They compared a total of 17,212 second-generation AVM survivors in 39 prefectures, including Hiroshima and Nagasaki, with the results of the National Health Survey of the general public regarding their white blood cells, hemoglobin count, blood pressure, and other factors. According to the test values of the report, when comparing second-generation AVM survivors in Hiroshima with the average values of Japanese as a whole, the number of white blood cells was about 20% less, and the proportion of abnormal urine proteins of elementary school girls was about 5 times higher. There were also deficiencies, such as the fact that the results of liver function that should have been tested were not noted. Nevertheless, the ministry concluded that the health condition of second-generation survivors is not at all different from citizens in general, and it is a current academic fact that second-generation AVM survivors have no health problems caused by AVM radiation. Seishi Morikawa said, "I thought it was a survey to deny the necessity of support measures for second-generation AVM survivors with the predetermined conclusion that there was no hereditary effect." Now he is 68 years old, living in Kawasaki City, Japan. He is the person who donated the report and was a representative of Kanto second-generation atomic bomb survivors liaison council at the time. He and the group members were opposed to the investigation from the time of announcement by the Ministry of Health and Welfare. This was because the Ministry of Health and Welfare stated that its purpose was to eliminate the anxiety of second-generation AVM survivors and as to confirm that there are no hereditary effects. Therefore, they felt that it would not lead to subsidized medical coverage. On August 6, 1945, his father, Sadami Morikawa, then 29 years old, was exposed to the atomic bombing about 1 kilometer east of the hypocenter of Hiroshima. Some years later, he moved to Kawasaki City as a result of a job transfer where he established an AVM survivors group. In 1971, he contributed to the realization of health checks and medical expenses subsidies for the second-generation AVM survivors by the Kawasaki local government ahead of other municipalities or the Japanese government. Seishi Morikawa was born 9 years after his father experienced the bombing. He was prone to become feverish in his early childhood. The cause however, was unknown. After entering elementary school, he suffered from diarrhea, fatigue, general malaise, and acute bronchitis associated with whenever a cold worsened. Hereditary effects of radiation have not been definitely proven. However, the principle of the atomic bomb victims relief law tells us, unless we can absolutely deny the possibility of hereditary effects, a certain degree of subsidized medical coverage and life support measures must be provided. In fact, a considerable number of second-generation survivors are currently suffering from several diseases or symptoms. Thus, Seishi came to the conclusion that the second generation of the A-bomb survivors are definitely victims of the atomic bombings. In 1982, in order to reach an agreement regarding the publication of the report, the Ministry of Health and Welfare presented a health examination survey and research report to the organization, of which Seishi was president. However, Seishi could not find any basis for the conclusion that there is no hereditary effect. To begin with, tests of this health examination were so few that it was not adequate for verifying the health condition or identifying diseases precisely and comprehensively. He foresaw it would cause the spread of misinformation among citizens, and he and his group demanded that the ministry not publicize the report. Kosei Takahashi, a lecturer of the Faculty of Medicine at the University of Tokyo, attended the negotiations with the ministry to support Seishi Morikawa's group. He was well known for his activism in pursuing the issues of harmful effects of medicines and chemicals. He passed away at the age of 86 in 2004. During the negotiations, he indicated the abnormal numerical value in some inspection results, such as urinary protein, and he affirmed there is a definite abnormality, though the ministry denied this, and the ministry's conclusion is unfit and not based on scientific data. In the end, the ministry seemed to not have made a report public, but the staff of the Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare said that it is difficult to confirm this because there are no staff members who were there at the time. Seishi stored the report carefully up until now. He was conflicted as to whether he should continue to withhold the report or to go ahead and publicize what he had once stopped. However, he finally decided to make it public because the report tells us that the point in dispute has not changed at all in 40 years. Issues such as the hereditary effects of radiation or the necessity of life support measures for second-generation survivors have been left unresolved. The Radiation Effects Research Foundation, which is jointly managed and operated by the governments of the United States and Japan, are planning to investigate health issues of second-generation A-bomb survivors with genome analysis from now on. However, they explained that the purpose is to clarify the reason why the health effects of second-generation A-bomb survivors have not been recognized and to respond to the anxiety of A-bomb survivors and second-generation A-bomb survivors. On the other hand, even from within the Radiation Effects Research Foundation, there are voices questioning the necessity of the investigation. They said, "We cannot conclude statistically that there is no hereditary effect, and it's impossible to reach an agreement on the necessity of support measures for second-generation Avon survivors purely based on the result of physical examinations and research." Seishi Morikawa appeals that many second-generation Avon survivors, including myself, have suffered from illnesses. If there were the support measures by the government, many lives would have been saved. Finally, I would like to express my appreciation to Ms. Misa Koyama for writing this epoch-making article, and I would like you to spread this message all over the world. Thank you for listening.